Today we will learn about the ectoparasiticides. So the ectoparasites are the ticks, fleas, and the many more insects which suck the blood of the animal, or they will also suck the body fluids of the animal and cause the economic loss in terms of the disease transmission and also in terms of the economic losses. So in this context, the ectoparasiticides are one of the important class of the chemicals that are required for eradication of the ectoparasites. So we'll see the ectoparasites. So ectoparasiticides are the agents used to kill or eradicate animal parasites that's also infesting the external surface of the body. Means these are adhering to the external surface of the body and cause a lot of trouble to the cattle, and they are widely used in veterinary medicine to control severe parasitic infestations that result in the clinical disease or losses in production and to prevent the spread of external parasite-borne diseases. So, especially if you come to the case of the cattle, the ticks are one of the most important ectoparasiticides. They are also going to suck the blood, but apart from that one, they cause some of the diseases, especially anaplasma, theileria, babesia, and the tick paralysis also they are going to cause, and there is severe economic loss. So the accurate identification of these parasites or correct diagnosis of the clinical condition is very much necessary for the selection of the use of suitable ectoparasiticides, because most of the ectoparasiticides are highly toxic in nature. Hence, we should know the kinetics of these agents, mechanism of action, then also the safety studies of these things, and many more information is very much required. And what is the line of treatment if the toxicity occurs? Because many times the owners are improperly use the ectoparasiticides and succumb their cattle to toxicity. That's why we need to study all the details about the ectoparasiticides. Of course, we are going to learn in the toxicology is concerned, but here as a therapeutic agent, the learning is little bit different. And the ectoparasites of veterinary species may belong to the class Insecta. I am going to tell little detail about the individual parasites, ectoparasites, so that it makes us to learn the life cycle, etc., so easily. And the class of the Insecta includes flies. The flies are the ones which transmit the trypanosomiasis, biting flies, and also the lumpy skin disease. And the lice, fleas, whereas the Arachnida, they contain the ticks and mites. So the mites are going to cause varieties of the dermatological disorder. And the insects normally not considered parasites, such as the face flies, they are the insects, and house flies are mosquitoes, but also cause inconvenience and irritation to animals. So what they are going to do, especially the flies and the mosquitoes, they are going to bite the animal and cause the fly worry and painful bites or producing toxic substance. So that's also one of the thing need to be considered. So even though they are not going to cause the severe damage, but there is a saying that 10% reduction in the milk yield, especially in the biting fly season, because of the irritation caused by the painful bite of these flies and mosquitoes. And ectoparasiticides, they produce a number of conditions in small and farm animals, including the disease, loss of condition and weight, decreased resistance to other disease, reduced feed conversion, then the production deficit and damage to the hide. So if a biting fly bites, then sometimes the wounds are going to happen, and once the wounds are there, especially in case of lumpy skin diseases, etc., the hide become totally useless, especially. So this is one of the constraint in the external parasiticide infestation. Then so these are the images of the varieties of the ectoparasites. So this may be the biting flies, varieties of the biting flies are there, then followed by the mites, and also the ticks, different varieties of the ticks are there. Anyway, we are going to learn them in detail in the future slide is concerned. Then coming to the Insecta, that's the first category. The class Insecta comprises arthropods called as the insects. Arthro means the multiple legs, and their body is divided into three distinct regions like head, thorax, and abdomen. I'm not going to tell in very detail, as you have already learned these things in the parasitology, entomology may be there. So they possess three pairs of legs, means 6 legs, arising from thorax, and one pair of antenna on the head. And the class includes three important orders like Diptera, then Anoptera, then Cypanoptera, which contains the flies, lice, fleas respectively. So each are belonging to the important orders. So the flies, the first order, that is the Diptera. So in the order Diptera, this includes two suborders of veterinary importance, the Pupipera and Athericera. So are the two classifications in this particular thing. So the Pupipera, so the suborder Pupipera, they are going to have the host as the sheep cat and New Forest fly, that's the horse cat. So the adults of these flies are blood-sucking parasites. So that's why these are dangerous. So the cat causes the great irritation and loss of vitality if present in great numbers. So in smaller number, the cattle are going to tolerate the bite, etc. But if there is an attack of very big mass, then it is very difficult. The sheep cat causes production by loss of soiling wool with its excreta and by damaging fleas from the biting and scratching at the site. So especially in case of sheep, they are going to spoil the wool because they defecate on the body, and the color of the very good hair wool will be distorted. So that's the Athericera, the suborder Athericera contains several families of the free-living flies, including that simply feed on the blood of the host. Example is the stable fly and tsetse fly and horn fly. So these are the blood-sucking parasites. And parasitic animals, these are only in during the larval stages or certain seasons. Example, the life cycle. So in case of this, there is all these flies, blowfly, warble fly, then the another flies, especially the horse board fly. These are all the blood-sucking parasite. So these are having a lot of economic importance because they cause severe damage. Economic importance is very much there, especially the blood-sucking parasite. And the stable fly, this is also known as the Stomaxis species. They breed in the stable manure and some other places, and this causes considerable irritation to horses and other animals. And surprisingly, they are very, very horse specific. So especially the Stomaxis or the stable flies, and they attack the horses only, and they can transmit the many of the diseases like anthrax, then Serra or the trypanosomiasis, and some of the other diseases. So the horn flies, like the Lyposia, they are usually clustered around the horn fly, or they are also known as the horn fly, and cause serious pests of cattle, causing irritation to the bites. So the one of the important thing is in case of the biting fly is, so the cattle will always worry about the biting flies and eat less. Because of this thing, there is drastic decrease in the milk yield to the extent of 10%. Whereas the tsetse flies they are also belonging to the Glossina species. They are the carriers of the trypanosomiasis, especially in case of animals and also in case of man. Whereas the warble flies, they are also known as hypod species, and the bot flies, they are also known as the Gastrophilus species. So they irritate animal, causing a lot of loss in condition. So the bots, when present in the large number, or the stomach or intestine, or even in the small numbers about the pharynx, or sometimes the anus, may cause sufferings to animals by the mechanical obstruction also. So these bot flies, they are present in the stomach of the animal, especially the larval stages, and cause sometimes the obstruction. The sheep nostril flies are called as the Estrus ovis. They female give rise to a condition known as the staggers or false grid or grub in the head, because they deposit larvae in the nostrils, and hatched larvae crawl up to the nose and may lodge in one of the sinuses of the skull. Okay, because of these bots or nostril flies, they lay egg in the nostril. So they crawl up and develop as the adult. And several flies of the order Diptera, including housefly, that's the Musca domestica. Then the flesh fly, Sarcophaga species, and screwworm fly, that is the Callitropa species. And also the mosquitoes, varieties of the mosquitoes, do cause considerable problem and nuisance to the domestic animals are concerned. So varieties of the animal species are affected by the varieties of the flies. Then this is the flies, about the flies we dealt, and the lice order Anoplura. So these lice are the wingless insects. So unlike the flies, these do not have the wings, and hence they are comprised of the head and strong claws. So depending upon the whether they bite the host or suck blood or the blood of the host. And two families of lice called as the biting lice, so and sucking lice are there. Especially these are the one which trouble the animals. And both types affect most domestic animals and also the man. So from man, the animal may get infected, or vice versa is also true. All lice affecting the poultry are biting lice. So lice mainly cause itching, scratching, and loss of hair, which may produce thickening up of the skin and loss of conditions. So these are all the lice menace, what they are going to cause, especially because of the continuous irritation. There is loss of the hair and thickening up of the skin because of the chronic bite. So these are all the troubles caused by the lice in case of the cattle. So these are the head gloves, then the body gloves and crab gloves. So all these are different. They are located in different parts. So the one which is present in the head part of the cattle is called as the head gloves. So it's very specific that they are staying there only. They are not going to mitigate or migrate. These are the body gloves and the crab nose. So they will stay anywhere in the body. Then the fleas, they are these are one of the toughest insects. Of course, once the fleas are attacked, it is very difficult to eradicate them. And of course, the dog owners are very much worried because the fleas are going to bite the human beings and also cause a lot of problem in case of the dogs are concerned. So these are the wingless insects, but they suck the blood and inject irritant substance into the body. So they lay eggs on the floor or the bedding that under suitable conditions and result in larvae, then pupa, and finally into the typical adult. So they jump to a very good length. That's also, even though they are the wingless insects, they jump from one animal to the another animal. So these affect the dogs and cats very commonly, but also parasitize the other species such as the chickens. Especially this is a very bad menace, especially in case of chicken. So if the flea bites are there, especially fleas are there in the chicken, if you just enter the poultry shed, you will get a lot of irritation because they are going to bite you continuously. And the pigs, horses, and cattle are also infested by the fleas. Somehow it is less in case of the cattle. Then the cat and dog fleas, example, they can transmit the Diphylidium caninum of the tapeworm, and especially by possibly by leishmaniasis also, is caused by the Diphylidium caninum, especially canine leishmaniasis. So here you can see that the adult flies, this adult insect is going to lay the different type of the eggs, and they are going to become larvae. Then they are going to become pupa, and ultimately they are going to become the adult. So this, you can see that this is the adult, and it has got the varieties of the pairs. Very, very strong this pair, because they can jump from one place to the another with lot of force. So these parts are important to it, especially these blood sucking mouth organs are there, so that they will give a very good bite, and they will inject some of the toxins in the body of the animals or the human beings. Then coming to the important class like the Arachnida, and the class Arachnida differs from Insecta in some of the aspects, as the adults have 8 legs and the body is divided into 2 portions, and a cephalothorax and abdomen. So there is a attaching part is there, then the blood will be stored in the abdomen. So this class include diverse group of the animals like the spiders, the mites, and ticks also coming under the same category. The most important order from the point of view of animal infestation is the ticks. So ticks are the important classes. The most important order from the point of view is Acarinas or Acarides. The order Acarina contains the ticks and mice, which are having the very dangerous property, especially in case of the large animals are concerned. So here you can see that the family Arachnida, it contains the scorpion, then the spiders, then ticks. So all of these are belonging to the same class Arachnida. So the scorpion, of course, it's not going to cause the trouble in case of the cattle, whereas the spiders, some of the spiders are having the toxicity. So here you can see that all have 4 pairs of the legs, means 8 legs are there. So these are the ticks order Acari. So this is a line diagram how they are going to look like. Then ticks are the Ixoderidae, especially Ixodus, and many more species are there. And we'll learn what are all the important species of the ticks that affect the domestic animal. So there are 2 types of the ticks. One is the hard tick, and it is belonging to the family, that's the Ixodidae, whereas the soft ticks, that is the Argacidae. So both types of the ticks parasitize animals and are among the worst enemies of the domestic animals. So these ticks parasitize extensively, especially in case of cattle and sheep, and also affect the horses, dogs, and poultry. So these are the worst insects, and they suck blood and cause irritation and transmit diseases like looping ill, that's one of the disease, or the tick-borne fever or tick paralysis, and also the spirochetosis, then pyroplasmosis. So, and ultimately they may cause the tick paralysis if it is not attended. So tick-borne disease is a very common phenomenon everywhere, and hence they may cause the tick paralysis. Then ticks also transmit babesiosis, the cause of the red water disease in case of the cattle, and also the canine babesiosis. So both of these are very life-threatening, especially in case of the large and small animals. And apart from this one, the fowls will also have the ticks, especially large number of the birds, and may cause severe anemia, as they are going to suck the blood, and reduction in egg production, and ultimately they may cause death. So as such, there are no what you call as the diseases caused by the ticks in case of the fowls, but they are going to cause the severe anemia. Then here you can see the varieties of the ticks, because the ticks are very much host specific. Here the ticks of the deer, they will not affect the cattle. So the female tick is a little bigger in size and is having the 8 pairs of legs, whereas the male is small, and the nymph of either male or female, they are still smaller. And here you can see that the ticks, adult ticks, this is the star tick, especially the A is a star tick, and the B is the American dog tick or the female. The especially the C is the black-legged tick. So black-legged tick, and it is female tick, and the blockade tick, that is the nymph stage. So it is very small. So here you can see that the female will be a little bigger than the male, then followed by the larva and the nymph and larva. So larva is just bigger than that of the egg, and after hatching it becomes the larva. So here they are having some millimeters in length depending upon the species. So they are having the smallest size to biggest size. So the mites belong to the families Sarcoptidae, Demodicidae, Germicidae, Gammacidae, and the Trombidae. So the family Sarcoptidae consists of small mites which cause the enormous damage to the mammals and the birds. So all these species of the animals are affected either by one or the different species of the ticks. And depending upon the type of the genus, they cause the sarcoptic mange, sauroptic mange, or notodric mange, that is the otodactic, choreoptic, then nemioptic mange in different species of the animals. So the family which is called as Demodicidae contains the elongated mites that live in the follicles of the skin and cause the demodactic mange in case of the dogs, sheep, and cattle. So the characteristic feature of the demodacosis is severe itching. The animals will itch severely, and the round-shaped lesions will be formed with lot of itching and irritation to the animal. The family Gammacidae include red mites or poultry, and the family that's the Trombididae includes the harvest mites. So these are all the different classes, and the mites usually reside on the skin or in the folds of the skin and cause the severe irritation, and of course the loss of hair and itching, then pustules, toxemia, and sometimes the huge economic loss, because many times the disease caused by the hematoprotozoa in case of cattle like the anaplasmosis, babesiosis, thaliariasis, etc. They are very fatal to the animal because in the early stages they are not going to be diagnosed, and the treatment is also very, very costly. So coming to the ideal ectoparasiticide, what are the characteristics? So this is the probable question, of course, in the examination. So an ideal ectoparasiticide should possess the following property. So the number one is it should be broad spectrum, that it should destroy all types of the external parasites. Means we either it is an antibiotic, antiviral, or any other drug, we require the broad spectrum ones because they are going to destroy all types of the external parasites, and it should be effective in all stages of the life cycle of parasites. So if you take the enthalmatics, then some of the enthalmatics affect the adult worms only, and some act on the larva and pupa stage. So in such case, if it is affecting only the adult, then we have to several times spray or eradicate by application of the medicines. So it should be non-toxic to the host animal, and many times it is very, very impossible because if you take any pesticide or acaricide, it is having it is maybe belonging to the category of the synthetic pyrethroid number 1, followed by the organochlorine compounds, or it may be a OPC compound. And it should be stable and have the longer residual activity on the surface, especially here on skin, because if it is not stable to the sunlight, etc., immediately its effect will go. And it should have the rapid onset of action, because if it is not having the rapid onset of the action, then the action is very, very slow, and the insects get adapted to the poison. So it should be compatible with vehicle base. So many times we cannot directly put the concentrated parasiticide directly on the animal's body, because there is irritation and toxicity also. So we are using some of the vehicles which use for mixing the chemicals, and it should not adversely affect or stain skin, hair or wool. So many times what happens now, this phenothiazines, etc., not introduced into the veterinary practice. Once upon a day, they were very commonly used. And the phenothiazine used to be converted to a dark pink color leucophenothiazine, and on the photosensitivity it used to cause. And lastly, everybody require this thing because it should be very, very cheap, and it should be easily available in the medical shop and applicable as an external parasiticide on the body of the animal. So how the ectoparasiticides need to be applied? So several techniques have been employed in the application of the ectoparasiticide, but the selection method depends upon the several factors, or such as the type and formulation of the ectoparasiticides, species and size of the animal, and type of the external parasites, and type of the action required, whether we need to kill entirely or just we can make them to be detached from the body, and how many numbers of the animals are there, and what is the final cost involved to eradicate the insects. And some important methods or the techniques of the ectoparasite includes are given below. You can see. Then number 1, it is dips. So in the introduction of pharmacology also we have seen what are all the dips. So this type whole body animal of the animal is immersed in a tank or a fluid which is containing the required quantity of ectoparasiticide. That's the dip. And sometimes it is done mechanically, or sometimes manually also it is done. So this ensures the complete wetting up of the animal in ectoparasiticide fluid, and is more useful in small or medium sized animals. Especially this is very commonly used in case of the sheep and goats. Of course, large animal it is difficult, but in the very advanced dairies with 2000 or more cattle, this need to be used. Then in most of the cases, permanent dipping vat is constructed in the farmhouses that contain parasiticides in the required strength. So they are going to correctly measure the required parasiticide and dilute, and then the animal is dipped. The animal is in a metallic cage, is mechanically lowered into the dip so that the fluid percolates into the body of the animal and returns. When after return also it will happen. Then sprays. So this is one of the common most techniques, spray. So ectoparasiticides is applied in the form of the mist or cloud of small flying drops. So maybe using a spray machine. So the spray machines are generally portable, small or big size, and this may be hand or motor driven, or motor driven. Both electric motors are fitted to the sprayers, and we can also use that. And it is one of the more commonly used method. In small animals, coat should be combed or brushed in the opposite direction, and the spray is applied to the roots of the fur, means against the directions of the hair we need to apply. Otherwise, the medicine will not go inside the body and cause the parasiticidic activity. So usually the ectoparasiticide always need a lot of care before application, and because this should not spill in case in the oral cavity, eyes and nose, because they are highly toxic and cause irritation many times. And pour-on preparations nowadays, these are becoming a little popular because the spraying or making the animal to be dipped, it's of consuming a lot of time and nobody is having the time nowadays. So the pour-on preparations, so these are the, especially pour-ons are the one which ectoparasiticide solution is poured along the animal's dorsal midline or behind the shoulders to the hip bones. So head to tail, or else you can say. So this is a drop, or a drop is applied. Then in some cases, like head fly, etc., it's only applicable to the top and scalp head of the base of the horse, wherever the insects are hiding. In case of pour-on techniques, some of the drug is absorbed percutaneously and produces systemic action also. That's one. Sometimes it is required. And some pour-on formulations like the synthetic pyrethroids. So nowadays it's an era of the pyrethroids. So they act by surface transfer and do not go through the skin. And pour-on treatments are useful for the control of the horn flies, lice, and other arthropod of the sheep and goat. So varieties of these ectoparasites are there, like the flies, lice, tick, and other parasites, especially in case of the cattle and sheep. These will get eradicated. Then spot-on preparations. So this is a technique very similar to that of the pour-on. A specified amount of the ectoparasiticide solution is applied to a small area on the head or neck, and ultimately spreads to the entire body and does its ectoparasiticide action. Then these spot-on treatments are useful in all the animals, including the cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, dogs, and cats. So depending upon the type of the animal, either a small drop is put or a bigger drop is put. Then ear tagging or ear tag. In these techniques, the polythene impregnated with the ectoparasiticide and the animal is tagged. It's called as the ear tagging, not the usual ear tagging, or stamped, called as the strip, is one of the both ears it is put. The insecticide impregnated tags or strips may also attach to the tail, called as the tail tag. Suppose if it is put in the ear, it is called as the ear tag. And the halters in case of the horses. So the drug from the tag or strip slowly released by the volatile action or by the body movements of the animal and spreads over the entire body surface. So it may be a dusting powder, or sometimes the volatile powder is also put in, especially while ear tagging the animal. And most tags act for about 4 to 5 months. This is very important because every day the farmer cannot put the ectoparasiticides on his animal skin. So hence they should be long acting. So this holds good that the ideal antiparasitic drug is concerned. And once it is the work is over, especially almost all, if the ticks or any other things, they get 0, then the tags will be removed. Then back rubbing or back rubber. Anyway, we'll show you the photos in the next slide. In this technique, there's a burlap or some cloth material called as the black rubber is charged with an ectoparasiticide and diluted with the oil. So the penetration capacity becomes more. So the burlap is wrapped around a wire, chain, or cable, which is then suspended between two poles, and pole and the ground and the pasture. So when cattle rub against the charged burlap, or cloth, the insecticide is transferred from the body. So whenever they are rubbing against the wall, etc., similar way it will happen. And the back rubbing is a useful technique to control flies and other arthropods that visit the cattle for a very short duration. So depending upon the type of the species, this is being recognized. Then dusting or dusting powder. So it's a technique of application of the fine powders, just like our talcum powders, on the surface of the animal's body. And dusting is mostly done manually, which the insecticide powder is directly applied on the parasites infested area. And sometimes, usually in case of parasites, the insecticide powder is put in a bag, in a small pouch or bag called as the dust bag, and hung at an opening gateway of areas to that contain the feed or water. So it is not put inside the cattle shed. Just before the entry of the cattle shed, these are kept. So when the cattle pass under this particular dust bag, a forced dusting is done on their body, which is done automatically. Then there is a device called as the collars or the collar. It's an application of insecticide. Impregnated collars are convenient means of controlling the certain parasites, especially fleas, because the fleas are one of the most terrible organisms and gives lot of worries to the animals, or they are also called as the flea worry or tick worry. And the collars are called as the flea and tick collars are mostly constituted of a solid thermoplastic resin with a liquid ectoparasiticide on relatively very high vapors of the pressure, and that is distributed to the collar. So in case of the collars, the drug is slowly released and covers the animal's body entirely and surrounding area with the vapor of the ectoparasiticide. So please remember that it may be any devices, they are highly toxic and one need to take a lot of care while application. Then in certain cases, the ectoparasiticide is put on the solid form of the collar, which gradually passes in case of the particles to surface of the collar, where it may act as a dust. So the collar should be applied to fit loosely around the animal skin for easy handling, because many times if it is having too much tight, there is a chance that the animal may get stuck somewhere. Then electicides collars are available in case of the cats, because cats are very ferocious animal and they will never allow you to put some of the boron preparations or the bath, etc. So the other methods, several other methods including shampooing and washing is available. Varieties of the shampoos are there, soaps are there. Then parenteral injections like the ivermectin and doromectin are there, and the oral administration of ectoparasiticides is also useful, just like the varieties of the drugs are there. We'll learn all these in the next slides. Then safety and certain restriction and also certain precautions. So most of the ectoparasiticides available are highly toxic in nature. Hence, one should be carefully, they need to be used, because most of these belong to the insect group and carry potential risk of the poisoning. Then two or more insecticides, particularly of the same group, example, organophosphates, should not be used simultaneously, because there is a chance that they will cause synergistic action and may be toxic to the host. So the combined therapy within a very less interval is also not recommended, and the ectoparasiticides should not be applied to the animal that are having the convalescent or it is stressed or sick animals. Don't try to do it. Or especially in case of cattle, you can manually remove it instead of making the drug to penetrate inside the skin, you can do it. Then unless recommended by the manufacturer, pregnant or lactating animals and cows which are less than 3 months and puppies or kittens below 12 weeks should not be treated with the insecticide because they are very susceptible to the toxicity at that time because of the hormonal difference and also the enzyme deficiencies. And also the care should be taken with dosage and handling of the product is very, very important, or else it will end up in severe toxicity. And operators should wear the protective gloves, protective clothing, gloves while applying the ectoparasiticides to the body of the animal and handling freshly treated animals. And toxic effects, if they are observed during the ectoparasiticide treatment, then it should be withdrawn immediately. No further application should be done. The manufacturer's recommendation, etc., should always be followed because in each ectoparasiticide there will be a leaflet, and if you have forgotten the composition, etc., then you can refer the literature so that it will give the exact use of this particular parasite and the precautions to be taken if there is a toxicity. So the regards the dose and concentration given in the current text are only guidelines and for safer use of this ectoparasiticides, because it is depending upon the different type of the animals also. So this is very important to remember the classification of the ectoparasiticides. So they are generally classified according to the primary use and the chemical structures. So both are there, like the following category. Number 1, insecticides. Then the ivermectins and mesomaicins. The second one is the insect growth regulators. Fourth one is the miscellaneous agents. So we'll come by one. The first one is the insecticides. The category 1 is pyrethroids and pyrethroid insecticides, because the pyrethroids are very commonly used nowadays because the toxicity potential is less, but they are very specific on the host. So the natural compounds like the Pyrethrins, which are obtained from the plant Chrysanthemum cinerarifolium. So these are and some of these other agents are totally a synthetic agent. Example, these all the ectoparasiticides belonging to the category synthetic pyrethroids like alethrine, permethrin, cypermethrin. So the cypermethrin, then the deltamethrin or the butox, what we say, and also the phenylate, cyfluthrin and cyhalothrin. So these are all the ectoparasiticides very commonly used in case of the cattle. Then the organophosphorus insecticides like all the phosphorus, chlorpyrifos, dichlorvos, diazinon, ethion, phenethion, malathion, then that's the chlorphenvphos. So these are the important. And apart from this one, some of the older agents like the homophos and femapure and trichlorphon are also used, which are belonging to the OPC compounds. So the another category is the carbamate insecticides. Example, the carbaryl and propagule or propagule. So organochlorine insecticides, they are also a class of the ectoparasiticides belonging to the category of OCC. So the example is the gamma benzene hexachloride or GBHC, or it's also known as the lindane. Then methoxychlor and chlordane are commonly used. There are 100 varieties of the organochlorines are there. Of course, many of them have been banned in India, including the BHC. Then formamidine insecticides like the amitraz, or a trade name, popular trade name is the RID. And that's another classification is chloronicotinyl insecticides like the imidacloprid. Nowadays it's becoming popular. Then the phenylpyrazole insecticides like the fipronil is one of the latest class of the insecticides, very efficacious and the less toxic. That's the fipronil. Whereas the botanical insecticide like this rotenone, then limonene, then linalool, all these can also act as the botanical insecticides and ectoparasiticides. Then the second category is the ivermectins and milbemycins, and also macrocyclic lactose. So ivermectin, deltamethrin, abamectin, all these are the category of the macrocyclic lactones. So ivermectin's example, this is the ivermectin, then abamectin, this doramectin, then epronamectin. So this until this doramectin, then this has introduced into the India is concerned. Then the selamectin is also another drug. Then milbemycins like milbemycin oxime and moxidectin. So recently this is also introduced into the veterinary market by some of the Indian veterinary pharmacological companies. Moxidectin. Then the insect growth regulators. Some of the hormones are there. That's the juvenile hormone analogs example. That's the juvenines example, methoprin. So they are going to act on the nymph stage of the tick or any other animal. Whereas the chitin synthesis inhibitors are the lufenuron, then difluorobenzone. The fourth one is the miscellaneous agents. So in every class of the drugs, we will get this. Example is the benzyl benzoate. It is very commonly used in the mites, and sulfur and borates. All these are effective, especially treatment of the ticks, not ticks, only in case of the mites. Then coming to the first category, that is the pyrethroids and the synthetic pyrethroids. So they are the new class of the insecticides that are very widely used throughout the country or the world in case of the veterinary practice is concerned. So they are occasionally used with the synergistic and with some of the fly repellent or to enhance their activity. So they are the pyrethroids are the natural insecticides produced from the extract of the chrysanthemum species plant and the flower Chrysanthemum cinerarifolium, and they still remain the useful because as they are largely supervised by synthetic analogs. So the synthetic analogs of the pyrethrins, they are very commonly used, and when compared to the other compounds, they are less hazardous to the human beings and also to the animal. Then the chemistry of these compounds, pyrethroids, of course, this will be same. It will be repeated in toxicology. So the natural pyrethrins have 6 insecticidally active components, namely pyrethrin 1, then cynarin 1, then jasmolin 1, etc. They are called as the pyrethrin, and the pyrethrin 1 and pyrethrin 2, cynarin 2 and jasmolin 2 together called as the pyrethrins 2. So the pyrethrin 1 is containing the pyrethrin 1 and cynarin 1. Whereas the structure of the synthetic pyrethroids ranges from very similar to the natural this pyrethrin. Example, the ilatrin, silatrin, and many more products are there. And highly dissimilar compounds chemically, especially flucitrinate. It's totally different from the regular ectoparasiticides. So based on the structure and biological effects, the synthetic pyrethroids further consists of 2 subgroups, that is non-cyanopyrethroids, example aletrin and permethrin. They are the non-silo pyrethroids, whereas the type 2 are cyanopyrethroids. Example, cypermethrin, deltamethrin, and favorates. So these are all the cyanopyrethroids and very popular ectoparasiticides, especially the cypermethrin, then deltamethrin, the favorates, etc. Coming to the mechanism of action of the pyrethroids are concerned, they interfere with the functions of the nervous system of the insects by modulating the cationic kinetics. Cation, the kinetic, especially cation means the sodium and calcium. So they impair this thing and hence the parasites get paralyzed. So what happens if this action, especially the sodium channel is altered, then there is a repetitive discharge or membrane depolarization, and ultimately they are going to succumb to death of the target ectoparasiticide. That's the simple mechanism of action of the pyrethroids. So whereas the type 2 pyrethroids in particular, so they extend the time of the constant of the sodium and current inactivation by many milliseconds to seconds, and they cause the persistent depolarization and the prolonged repetitive firing of sensory and organs and muscle fibers. So there is fasciculation and twitches, etc. are present, and additionally type 2 pyrethroids are active on the GABA receptor chloride channel and interfering with binding it to the GABA. Especially GABA is also a neurotransmitter, especially in case of the insects. Whereas some of the insects are not going to pass through the blood-brain barrier, and hence they are little safe. So coming to the kinetics, they are highly lipophilic, then ready absorption orally or via the lungs. Via lungs also they are absorbed. Then the metabolism occurs, especially they are metabolized in the plasma and also in case of liver hysteresis. Then metabolism may also occur in the intestinal tract, so oral toxicity is somehow less. And the rate of the metabolism or pyrethroid insecticides, so it is determining the toxicity in case of a particular species, as metabolites generally have low toxicity. So the metabolites are excreted in the urine. Suppose if by chance, many times the animals have got the habit of licking the body, and at that time definitely it will go inside the body of the animal and get metabolized and get excreted in the urine after conjugation with glycine, glutamic acid, or the sulfate. Then side effects, nothing to mention more because they are having a lot of side effects. Whereas the pyrethroids are the safe among the ectoparasites when compared to the these organochlorine compounds, oldest drugs, whereas the organophosphorus compounds, the carbamates, etc., they are safe. Comparatively, they are safe with the other pesticides. So overdosage and accidental oral exposure and licking sometimes, especially of the animal, characterized by, so these are all the characters: restlessness, then there is salivation, then the animal is unable to walk properly in coordination. Sometimes the projectile, this emesis is also present, and the later the tremors, then hyperexcitability or depression, it is going to start, and disorientation and seizures. These are all the clinical signs exhibited by the animal when exposed to the pyrethroid toxicity. So the death, especially in case of this pyrethroids, is due to the respiratory arrest or respiratory failure. And the dermal exposure, in addition, may produce allergic reactions like the dermatitis. So whenever applying the synthetic pyrethroids, please be careful, because if you apply on the skin of the buffaloes, etc., because of the irritation, they start dancing, and burning and itching sensation, especially in the skin, and blisters of toxicity of the pyrethroids. In general, this decrease in ambient temperature and increase in the more and more temperature. So the treatment of the toxicity of synthetic pyrethroids, it's a very common toxicity because either it's owner induced or sometimes accidental. And there is no acceptable treatment for the pyrethroids. So all need to be treated symptomatically, and the seizures can be controlled by the use of diazepam, then methocarbamol or chlorhelidate, especially in case of large animals. And animals should be bathed with soap or detergent if exposure is the dermal exposure. Most of the time it is dermal exposure. So some of the compounds are of the natural one, like the pyrethrins. So these are all the group of the chemically related 6 natural insecticidal esters. That's the this pyrethrins 1, 2, and cynorins 1, 2, and jasmolins 1 and 2. So these are all the classifications of the natural erythroids. So they possess excellent knockdown properties and low mammalian toxicity. So they are highly host specific, means they are affecting on the host, but least toxic to the host, whereas the pest, they are highly active. And although they are useful in the ectoparasiticides and included in many formulations, their use has been declined nowadays because the development of more efficacious and stable pyrethroids. So nowadays, these pyrethroids, they have been replaced by the newer agents like fipronil, etc., because they are less toxic, non-irritant, and the residual effect is also less. Then synergistics like this piperonil, but oxide schemax, then this pipercyclonine are mostly included in the formulation. Then they increase the stability and effectiveness of the pyrethroid. So these are mixed with some of the other vehicles so that the toxicity becomes less and also the penetration is more. And pyrethroids are mostly used in the concentration of the 0.1 or 0.2% in the combination with 0.5 to 1% piperonyl butoxide, especially in case of sprays, foam, dust, shampoos, dips, or eardrops for use against the flies, lice, ticks, mites, in case of dogs and cats. And also they are used as sprays against the flies and the lice in case of the horses. So tomorrow we will learn about the synthetic compound because these are all the important compounds very commonly used and cause a lot of toxicities also.